Okay, so good evening and welcome. My name is Esley Caldwell. I am an acupuncturist with Caldwell Family Wellness in Cincinnati, Ohio. And today we are going to be talking about the five elements of Chinese medicine. This will be um, part part one of a two-part series on the five elements. Um, and the sort of general theme is how to find harmony in a busy world. And so part two will explore some of the external aspects of it, and then part one will explore some of the external aspects of the five elements in the world around us, and then in part two we'll explore some of the internal aspects within us. And give me 1 second, just get the breeze going here. Okay, and um, just a general all-purpose disclaimer. The information in this presentation is for information purposes only. So please consult with your healthcare provider before you begin any new wellness routine. This talk will be a little bit different than some of the other talks that we've given that have been maybe a little more technical or scientific about different aspects of Chinese medicine or acupuncture or health and wellness in general. And excuse me, in this presentation and our next one, we're going to be talking more about some of the philosophical underpinnings of Chinese medicine. So, if you heard us talk before about acupuncture or about any aspect of Chinese medicine, then you've heard us talk about the notion of harmony. That Chinese medicine is about bringing our body into harmony. That disease states dis-ease is a state of not being in harmony, so that we have some sort of disruption or disturbance in the harmony within us, and that is causing our issues. And so Chinese medicine is all about trying to find ways for us to live in harmony with the world around us. And in that process of living in harmony, we're seeking tranquility, tranquility, equilibrium, and balance, and also ease. And so some of the fundamental questions that we ask from a philosophical standpoint when it comes to Chinese medicine, we're asking, how can we live in harmony and equilibrium with the ecosystem? And then how can we live in harmony and equilibrium within ourselves? Those are two of the fundamental questions that we're trying to answer. And therefore harmony becomes a way of life. It becomes a way of how we express ourselves in the world, how we live our lives. And we can be healthier and happier the more that we live in sync with nature. And so harmony is an important component of our health and our happiness. It increases our health, increases our resilience. If you remember from a talk we gave a couple of months back, maybe it was last year, we talked about resilience as sort of the capacity to withstand change. And so resilience is something that harmony helps us to develop and to inculcate within ourselves. And then harmony is also, therefore, stress management, so that the more harmonious we can be, the less stress we have. And the reality is that at this time and place in world history, there is a great deal of stress in the world. You know, there's war. There's right now here in Ohio, we're having poor air quality from wildfires in Canada, several hundred miles away. The smoke has traveled all the way down here to Cincinnati, and so we're having health issues for those of us that are here. Some of my family is in New York this week, and they are also experiencing, probably to a more significant extent, because of fires around the eastern part of Canada and Nova Scotia. They're experiencing a lot of smoke and issues there. And so there's my point is simply that there's a tremendous amount of stress that is in the world, and harmony can help us to mitigate that stress as it affects us. And so one of the great tragedies of our human existence is that we live out of sync with our ecosystem. We're probably the only species on this planet that lives so far out of sync with the environment, out of harmony with the world around us. And so Chinese medicine as a lifestyle, it's all about living in harmony with our environment and about going with the flow. And one of the derivative perspectives from this understanding is that everything in the world is connected. All people are connected, and we are connected to everything else in the world. And there's also the concept of microcosm and macrocosm. So um, I was had my eyes checked yesterday, and they have this. I don't know. Some of you probably heard of this thing. Should have it had out for a few years, but it's a sort of you put your eye up against this thing that there's a green light, and you get closer and it turns blue. Maybe it's blue and then it turns green. But this light is sort of a retina scan. It takes a whole picture of your eye. And when I saw the images and the optometrist was explaining what was going on in the eye and whatnot, it was fascinating because the eye, this very small part of our body, resembled some of the pictures you see of from the Hubble telescope of things in the universe that are light, thousands of light years away that are massive structures in the galaxy that resemble this part of the eye. And the same thing if you look at some of the subatomic particles in the body, they look similar to things that are quite massive way out there in the universe. And so the microcosm, the small parts, are reflected oftentimes in the big parts and the macrocosm. Even from the standpoint of Chinese medicine in our body, those of you who've had acupuncture familiar from somebody else, and you've heard them talking about or doing acupuncture points on your ear, the ear is a microsystem. Okay, so your entire body is mapped out on the ear. So you have your legs up here, your arm over here, your head down at the earlobe. The whole body is mapped out on the ear, and so you can treat parts of this microcosm to affect change in the macrocosm of the whole body. And this is part of our understanding of our interconnectedness and interrelatedness with all things. And so in the microcosm within us, our internal ecosystem, we need all five of these elemental energies that we're going to discuss now. We need all of them to be balanced in order for us to flourish. So the five elements, which are also called five phases, phase, and I'll probably use the terms interchangeably, phase or element. These are wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Okay, this is another image of them, and the lines, the star shape in the center. There's some other meanings to that, but generally there's some relation, some interplay between them. So these five phases help to bring us back into a seasonal acclimation, acclimate us to the seasons, to the macrocosm around us. And they also help us to understand how all of human health, our emotions, our diet, our way of being in the world is connected with our environment and connected with nature. So these five phases, they manifest as the seasons. They manifest as different organs of the body. They manifest as some of the emotional energies that we experience as human beings. They manifest as body types and also as personalities. So in this talk today, we're not going to get really too much into the bottom four from organs down to personality. We're going to focus on seasons and sort of the macrocosm aspect of it. That said, these five phases help us to learn and to determine and to experience optimal behavior. What's optimal behavior during the seasons in order for us to be in harmony with these macro energies? What's optimal behavior during time of day for us to be in harmony? And then what's also optimal behavior for different personality types? So we're going to talk about from the standpoint um, of seasonal interaction is how to eat with the seasons, how to eat in a way that is supportive of the season that you are in. And so first, in that regard, just kind of talking generally about seasonal eating. Ideally, we should or could eat local food in season. So food that was grown local, I would say local is within 100 miles of where you live. Um, and seasonal eating respects the natural cycles of our food. And what that means, natural cycles. There's, right now, you could this time of year here in Ohio, there's a lot of things that grow well. There are things that grow well in the spring, there are things that grow well in the fall. There's not a lot that grows in the winter. There are some things that can grow a little bit in the wintertime. But you go to the store and you would think that strawberries are available year round. Strawberries are not available year round. Strawberries are available right now, but they're not available all year round. They are, um, there's a certain sort of season for things, and there are these natural cycles. And so, this is a sort of other topic, and it's challenging to do, but there's a possibility to eat within those natural cycles. Um, so, what are the benefits of seasonal eating? Well, when you eat food that's fresh, there's going to be more nutrients in that food. I'm a, have as a hobby, I do some gardening. And when I pick food from my garden, pick it straight piece of lettuce and eat it. That's as fresh as it gets. And so there's more nutrient density in that food. There's also a lower carbon footprint than foods that were grown on a different continent. We look at these wildfires that are happening. Some would say that that's a product of climate change, and anything we can do to not ship food from South America. A lot of times the blueberries we get come from Peru or Ecuador. Avocados come from somewhere else. So they're trying to shift out of that um, of getting food that travels such a great distance. Um, so that's some of the important reasons for seasonal eating. Here in Ohio, we got a whole bunch of farmers markets. In Cincinnati, there's a ton because there are a lot of farms within 100 miles of here. And as more and more people begin to support local farms, they have more produce. The prices also drop. And local produce, and, at these farmers markets, for example, Findlay Market downtown, North Side on the west side, Hyde Park on the east side. The farmers that come out there, they often tend not to use chemicals or pesticides in the food, so it's a certain freshness. It's grown nearby, and just from a standpoint of Chinese medicine, the more local the food is, there are some sort of perhaps unknown health benefits, but there's certainly some benefit to eating food that is grown nearby. So a little bit more about the seasonal eating in Chinese medicine. So as we said earlier, the five elements or five phases are connected with, in the macrocosm, the larger world around us, with five seasons. Okay. Now, we typically think of four seasons, right? Summer, um, fall, winter, and spring. And we also typically think of four elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Um, that said, in Chinese medicine, we have the addition of the element of metal, which is associated with the fall. We have the element of wood, which is associated with the spring. And then there's also an additional season, the season of late summer. So late summer is sort of a 5-week period from roughly toward the end of August through September. and then kind of October is when we're starting with winter. Um, so we'll talk more about that momentarily. But getting into what we generally start up with as the first element, which is wood, associated with the spring. Um, and folks, if you're coming on late, please mute your microphone so we're not hearing any background noise. Um, so the element of wood, and this image here is very emblematic of wood. Um, wood is associated with the spring, and dandelion is actually, maybe people don't know this, but dandelions are edible. The dandelion greens are edible enough that I've seen them in stores from time to time. There are folks a lot of times that associate dandelion roots with detoxing the liver. The liver is one of the organs associated with the wood element. The root is very, very bitter. Um, Dandelion leaves also are a little bit bitter, but not nearly as much as the root. And the flower is also, my understanding, possibly edible. I should know that, and I forget. I may have eaten one in the past, and I'm blanking on it now, but the leaves are definitely edible. And what is really, I think, amazing, and we've all probably seen this sort of thing and walk by and not notice this plant growing up through a crack. And you see the little bit of amount of dirt that's in that crack. It's the smallest amount of dirt was all that it took for that seed that was so persistent and driven to live and to exist and to grow. All it needed was a little bit of dirt, a little bit of water, and shazam, it's grown up. And so that sort of irrepressible desire, nothing could stop that seed from growing. That is the energy of wood. And there's this force and power of nature that you feel during the springtime, like this little seed, this little, those dandelions, and the seed is so tiny, they just blow around, and yet they have so much power to create this plant. There's this constant motion and this power and drive for growth. Now, the organs that are associated with the liver and the gallbladder are, I'm sorry, the organs associated with wood are the liver and the gallbladder. And right now, we are still kind of sort of in spring. Especially these days when the weather is not that hot just yet. And officially spring starts, or I'm sorry, summer starts on June 20th or 21st. So here is another beautiful picture of wood, this little seed sprout coming up. And this type of growth you're seeing right here may have happened overnight. That this conditions just developed enough for this thing to take off overnight. And so in the springtime, everything grows. But even kids, and there have actually been some studies about this, that kids sprout. They start growing in the springtime and have a big growth spurt over the summer. And kids have slower growth in the wintertime. There's that phrase that we say, we haven't seen someone for a while, a kid for a while. You say you've grown so much, and so everything grows in the spring. Spring is just this energy of growth and revival, um, and and so one of the best foods to eat in the springtime are sprouts. You can sprout a whole bunch of different stuff. A lot of people like mung bean sprouts. There's different sprouts. You can eat the sprouts, and the sprouts contain that power of and eating a sprout is different than eating a seed. Um, there's a trend of sprouted grains, so you can get your grains already sprouted, which is excellent. And those early leafy greens that have just sort of started coming out, like some of the earliest plants to come out during winter. I'm sorry, coming into spring that are edible, like romaine lettuce and spinach, and of course dandelion greens. These all have that spring wood energy. It helps to support that wood energy in the body. And those of you who are patients of mine, who've been around for a while, reading newsletters, or can we talk about it? We talk about detoxing the liver. And one of the best times to do a detox is in the springtime because, again, spring is associated with the liver, that energy of rejuvenation and revitalization and rebirth. And it's a great time to purify and cleanse out the liver. So that the springtime is sort of naturally facilitative of liver detoxification. So next we have the season of the summer, which is associated with the fire element. And we didn't mention the emotion of wood, but it's that drive. There's some folks say it's anger, and there it certainly is. There can be um, anger can be sort of an affliction of the wood element, but generally speaking, wood is just that drive for just to grow, that passion, that sort of ambition and drive to grow. For the summertime, the emotion is joy. And you think of the summer as this time of absolute excitement, exuberance. There's a lot of laughter and exultation. And the summer, as part of the fire element, the fire element is connected with the heart and the small intestine and our circulatory system. So in the summertime, plants have reached the fullness of their growth. There's a burst of flowers. There's, maybe some fruit is starting. And it's party time. It's the time of pollination. So the bees are out, and the flowers and plants are being pollinated. And because it's so joyful, we don't hear about seasonal affective disorder during the summertime. So there's more sunny days in those warmer months, more joy, less depression. The depression side of winter is long past. So summer foods, fire foods. It is helpful to eat cooling foods in the summertime to disperse the heat. So we're talking about watermelon and other melons. Like watermelon is one of the best ones that grows around here. Also, cucumbers are great to cool the body down. And then in general, eating more salad when it's warmer, eating fruit, and then also smoothies. I would not suggest putting ice in the smoothie. That said, smoothies are a good thing to eat in the summertime. The last time I gave this talk, we talked for a while about ice. A lot of people were interested in that, so I'll just give a brief sort of synopsis of why I say not to eat cold foods, super cold, at least not very often. So we have, and that's especially the case for folks who are dealing with acid reflux. If you're having any sort of indigestion, acid reflux, I would advise eating as simply as possible, not mixing lots of different types of food together, avoiding, for example, some of the worst offenders like spicy food, fried foods, keeping those out of your diet altogether. And um, when you drink or have a lot of cold things and mix it with a meal, then there tends to be some stagnation, food stagnation that can happen in your digestive system or in your stomach in particular. In order for food to pass through to leave your stomach and go into your small intestine, to go through the pyloric valve and enter the small intestine, the contents have to start to reach a sort of uniform temperature. And if you've eaten a lot of cold things, that's going to slow your digestion down. So until things warm up in there, your food is going to sit and essentially ferment and rot in your gut. And so that's why, this is especially true with drinking alcohol. People, alcohol can often cause acid reflux, especially if you're drinking alcohol with food or having a cold, alcoholic, beverage, cold beer with food. It can slow things down. So alcohol is one of those foods that one of those sort of things that is I don't necessarily recommend That said, people that do drink, one of the things you can do to not have it bother you so much is to drink the alcohol before you eat, at least 20, 30 minutes before you eat, have the alcohol, and then not eat it while you're not drink it while you're eating. But with the cold food, it slows things down. And so that's one of the sort of big things that we want things to be able to move and break down quickly. Cold food slow things down. And when your food starts to rot and ferment, you're more likely to start having acid reflux symptoms. So although I say smoothie, I don't mean like a smoothie where you put ice in it. You can use some frozen things, but try to get it more close to room temperature before you drink it. Just a FYI. So getting into earth, late summer. And again, in Chinese medicine, we talk about um, 5 seasons instead of 4 seasons. So we add the late summer of the earth time between summer and fall. And this is like a 5 week period, roughly from late August through September. And then fall would start in October. So late summer, the organ connected with the earth is the spleen. And in Chinese medicine, we say spleen, but we really mean the pancreas. So pancreas and the stomach, which are the two principal digestive organs. I'm sorry, pancreas secretes enzymes that help food digest in the stomach and in the small intestine, but they are an important part of that digestive process. And so the earth element is involved to a significant extent with our internal earth. So again, microcosm, macrocosm. Earth on the inside of our body is our microbiome. These are the beneficial bacteria that live in us and also on us. Our body we're just covered in bacteria, mostly beneficial. And all the research about the microbiome is showing that the healthier our bacteria are, the more robust our health is, the more resilience we have, the more harmony we have. So spleen, pancreas connected with the earth, and some of the foods for the late summer. A lot of fruit ripens then. Apples, pears, raspberries, blackberries, and figs. Figs do grow in this area. So these are some of the fruits. Now there are some raspberries that come up earlier in the year before late summer, but there's also raspberries that definitely come up then. And so I'm actually trying to grow raspberries. So we'll see how it works. And next, the season is autumn, associated with the meadow element. I love seeing dogs and leaves. So this is not my dog, but it's a cute picture. So the autumn is a contemplative time. You look at this picture here. This is sort of a contemplative space where we're looking at the leaves fall. We're like leaves. We're gonna fall one day too. So one of the big characteristics of the autumn is dryness. The humidity has left the air, and this is how you know when you transition from earth to metal, is when that humidity is gone. Air gets dry. That's when we really start to get into the metal time. And so one of the big things that people notice starting to happen in the autumn is dry skin, needing a little more lotion, and metal is connected with our breath and with our skin. The organs associated with the metal element are the large intestine and the lung. And so what happens in the fall is if you've heard of gourds, like this, I think there's a picture of them. Oh, coming up right here, gourds. So like when fruit that wasn't picked or eaten falls to the ground, it dries out and it thickens its skin to protect the seeds inside, and that makes gourds. And this is always around here, at least in Ohio, this is like a fall tradition, right? And these squashes that are basically grown, just kind of shriveled up and dried. That's a real kind of metal thing. So these are some of the foods that are become more widely available in the fall. Um, and a lot of them you don't see any other time of the year. But the if you're not familiar with the pumpkin, is obvious, right? There's pumpkins on the right, pumpkins on the left. The black one in the middle, I believe, is an acorn squash. And then the yellow and the green line is a delicata squash. And but butternut squash, there are a lot of squashes that become ripe in the fall. So zucchini, pumpkin, squash, those are foods that help to support our uh, the metal energy within us and help us to become in sync with that season while we're in that season. So next we move to the water element and the season of winter. So winter is a time of rest and hibernation. And we think of how many breaks we have during that winter period. And even the winter, the Christmas holiday, those couple of weeks where and Christmas to New Year's, that time of resting. And water has to do with um, developing our deep reserves of vitality and also our resilience. So it's good to embrace slowness in the wintertime. And there's a tendency in the winter to desire more warming food. So some of those foods, winter is a good time for warming soups and teas. Ginger tea can be great. Just things that are going to warm us up. And a good food to balance digestion in the wintertime are radishes, which are picked. They some people pick them, they let them just go the whole winter. But you can kind of pick them toward the end. They're typically picked toward the end of fall, and so they're a good thing to eat in that winter time. So hibernation. Um, we think about bears and some other animals hibernating, but there are some ways that these seasonal things that we talk about um, are are already affecting us as people. And so these are these sort of macro energies that affect us that determine some of our human behaviors. We are animals as well. So um, there are seasonal sleep is a great example of a seasonal adaptation that is instinctual and an important, really huge part of our human experience. So, from the standpoint of five phases in sleep, the hormone melatonin, a lot of folks take this um, to help with sleep. It is exclusively secreted at night, and what folks have been noticing from a research standpoint is that melatonin secretions can be higher in the winter because the nights are longer. So it's exclusively secreted at night. We have longer nights. You can have more melatonin, and that melatonin secretion is therefore lower in shorter summer nights. And I've certainly observed this that children naturally sleep more during the winter because there's less daylight. So more sleep. That melatonin is higher. They're going to be sleeping more. And in the summertime, kids go to bed later, they wake up earlier. So it's the opposite of the wintertime. So longer days in the summer, shorter nights, less sleep. Shorter days in the wintertime, longer nights, more sleep. And 34% of Americans report that they slept more during the winter, and especially when you live in an area that is colder and has a darker climate. So another aspect to this is that the deeper and colder the winter is, the more your internal circadian biological clock desires sleep. So basically, cold, deep winter puts you more in tune, in sync with the water energies of winter. And so you go into that human hibernation and that whole aspect of the water energy of resting, of hibernation, of slowing down. The deeper and more intense that winter is, the more your body syncs up. Your internal clock, sort of unconscious behavior, syncs up. So less sunlight, colder temperatures, more sleep. And people actually need more sleep and need deeper sleep in the wintertime. In order to feel well, you need more. So that is the end. That is our last slide. Are there any questions? You can type it or ask it if you have any questions. And if you joined us late, I will be, the recording will come out in our next newsletter in a couple weeks. And if you want it sooner than that, just send me an email and I'll get you the link sooner. You want to hear the beginning if you came in late. All right, so if there are not any questions, then thank you for joining us and have a wonderful evening. Oh, here's a question. Oh, it's a thank you. Excellent. You're welcome. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.